What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. All right, y'all, check it out. Stick is our sponsor, connectwithstick.com. This is an incredible text and marketing tool. So check this out. Engage your customers, drive foot traffic, and increase sales at your bar, your restaurant, your store with Stick. Your targeted messages reach your audience instantly, promoting special offers and events. Look, 98% of texts are seen within 3 minutes. So this thing is simple and it's effective and it works. Elevate your marketing strategy and watch your customer base grow with the most direct way to connect with your customers through text. Start today and see results on the very first text. Stick is a better way to connect with your customers and the easiest way to increase your sales. www.connectwithstick.com. And again, that's www.connectwithstick.com. Folks, this is an awesome sponsor. It's an awesome business. We at Schedulefly know them well. We know that the results are there. This is a highly effective tool, and it's run by a business run by great people. Check them out, connectwithstick.com. All right, y'all. This is an epic episode. I mean, literally, we went for close to 2 hours. This is George and Amanda, and this is Vicious Biscuit. And I just cannot say enough of how much I just learned. And as I said during the episode, I feel like this is a master class on how to set up a franchise business for success. Whether you are in the franchise world or not, if you're in the hospitality world, this is an absolute must-listen episode. It was such an honor to have them here in studio. They came up from Charleston, and I hope it was worth their trip. It was certainly an amazing opportunity and experience, and quite a bit learned over the last couple hours. You're going to love this episode. And I have been to Vicious Biscuit. I can absolutely attest that both the food and the experience are amazing. You're going to hear about this brand if you haven't already. Enjoy this episode, y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Share this one around. See ya. So here we are at Everybody Studios in Charlotte. And what a cool, special opportunity, y'all. Thank you for making the trip from Charleston to be here. George and Amanda, if you just introduce yourselves real quick.
Yeah, so I'm George McLaughlin, CEO and co-founder of Vicious Biscuit out of Charleston, South Carolina.
And I'm Amanda Kahalehoe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Vicious Biscuit.
All right. So, y'all, this is, you've built this incredible brand, and I have a lot of things I want to ask y'all both about today. I always like to ask people, and Amanda, I'll start with you. The one question I ask everybody that comes on here is like, how and when and why did you get started in this wonderful, wild, crazy world of hospitality?
Sure. So I'm fairly new to the hospitality industry. I do not come from this space. I actually have only become part of this space thanks to Vicious Biscuit and George and our team. So I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and I've worked my entire professional career in the tech and security industry. And moved down here during COVID, prior to kind of the COVID mass migration. And when I moved here, I stayed on with my prior company for a year. And then I was connected to George through a consulting firm that I was working with in an outsourced capacity. George had just recently integrated with Restaurant 365, and they were looking for a controller and somebody to really build out this new system that they were anticipating using while they were franchising. So this was the first client that this company had brought on since I had started with them, and quickly learned that Vicious needed a little bit more than a controller as they were just beginning to scale franchising. So I was really involved with a lot of just kind of the business operations pieces, the tech integration and implementation at the start, but really over about a 6 to 7 month period of working with them and just kind of this part-time capacity, I really developed this passion for what they were doing. I mean, the hospitality industry is so different than any other space, especially a tech space, right?
Yep.
There's really this people component, and it was really fulfilling. And it was something I had never experienced before. So about 7 months later, these guys finally convinced me to join them, and it has been a wild ride ever since. It's been probably the most fulfilling, the hardest, but most fulfilling 3 years of my professional career.
Well, there you kind of summed it up. It is a very fulfilling profession, but it comes with all kinds of challenges. And anybody that's been in this business would agree. I've always said when we've been doing this podcast like 12 years or whatever it is. And I've always, when I started, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn from all these like really good operators, and I want to go start a restaurant one day. I have done over 500 episodes now, and I've learned a ton, and I have no desire to start a restaurant because I don't have what it takes, but I admire what y'all do so much, and I think that it adds so much value to every community, and we'll dive into that as well. But I thought that was the case because I read your LinkedIn bio, and I wasn't sure. There's always I was washing dishes when I was 14, and then I was a server, and then I came back. So this is it.
This is my first foray into the restaurant world. And I will say it's one of the closest knit communities that I've ever experienced in any industry. I mean, I've been to several conferences, I've spoken at other conferences, and just the encouragement and the thought leadership and sharing that is in this industry it's really special. I mean, it is really a community, and I think that's what's really special about being a part of it, and a part especially about our concept and brand. So much of what Vicious is about is connection and community. So it's really exciting to be a part of it.
Well, we'll get into a little bit of the confluence of the tech and the people, and how those all come together. So, okay, cool. All right, George, you were are you from Jacksonville?
So my family originally is, but I went to high school in Jacksonville.
You went to Bowles.
So I went to the Bowles School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you know?
I know. I was about to comment. Great restaurant.
Well, it's funny because the last time I was so this shirt, if you're just listening and not watching, is for Taco Lou, which is, Don Nichols, the owner there, they've been using Schedulefly for like, I don't know, 12 years or something crazy like that. And I've been there. I'd heard all these great things about it, and I've been there a couple times. But the last time I was there, it's on this annual trip me and a few buddies make down to Florida for a hunting trip down south of Orlando. And we stay, on the way down, we stay in Jack's Beach, or is it Neptune Beach? And we stay in y'all have a location there.
We do.
I literally went to Al's Pizza.
Right across the street.
And I looked over, I'm like, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
God, they're really growing. They're here.
Right.
So, but you knew the area. I
did.
Okay.
Yeah. So my parents are originally from Jacksonville.
Okay.
And, grandparents were there, and so still my mom lives in Jacksonville. So that's why I wanted to take Vicious to Jacksonville.
Well, just as an aside, that Neptune Beach area is like one of the coolest.
It really is.
I could live there.
Yeah.
That's a cool area. Okay, so now did you get started in hospitality, like washing dishes as a kid, or was it a college thing? Or
I did. My first restaurant job was at the Ortega Yacht Club in Jacksonville, and then I went. That was my freshman year in college, and then when I went to Ole Miss, and so end of my sophomore year, I want to stay in Oxford. So I went and tried to get a job at the hardest place to get a job, and at that time it was called Checkers, which then quickly turned into McAllister's Deli.
Gotcha.
So I started with the Newcomb family when they were very early on. I only had 2 locations actually, and they just opened Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and that's where they eventually changed the name to McAllister's Deli. And so I fell in love with it. I was originally going to Ole Miss for business law, and to come back to, actually it was my father who was the one that convinced me to go to Ole Miss, and thought I would go back into the family business, which was in Laurel, Mississippi, where I was born. Fell in love with the restaurant business, and worked there full time both my junior and senior year while going to school full time. And then when I graduated in '95, Dr. Newcomb asked me to move to Ridgeland, Mississippi, which is Jackson, where we opened our 4th location, and that's where we started the franchise division for McAllister's.
Okay.
So I was very early on working
Yeah.
with Chris and Neil, the two
Yeah.
sons, and it was an unbelievable ride. I'll never forget telling my mom when she asked me, "All right, you going to graduate school? What's next?" I said, "I'm actually moving to Jackson, Mississippi to take a restaurant job." And she was like, "Wait a second, nobody makes money in the restaurant business." I was like, "Oh well, you have soon forgotten about some of the people that I knew that were in the restaurant business." So it was quite a unique experience, to say the least.
Why did we send you to college? You're getting to know running restaurants.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so McAllister's. I didn't realize that's where that all started. How many locations do they have now?
They have over 500 now.
Over 500.
So
Okay.
it started in Oxford.
What about it? Like, what was it that caught you?
You know, it was really when I decided to stay on and work my junior year, and we had our first football game, and people were waiting 2 hours for a sandwich, and I was like, "Really? What are these guys waiting for 2 hours for a sandwich?" And I was back in the kitchen looking through the pass-through window, and just the passion for it, and really seeing the reaction of the customers. You know, the immediate gratification of what we were doing and serving. So I worked with Neil Newcomb, who was a younger son. We created the catering of McAllister's with us to really target the football. And man, I always say this about the restaurant business, man. Once it's in your blood, you can't get it out. And so it's awesome. So
I think that's a good way to put it. It's kind of a shared thing. Like, you'll be doing this the rest of your life, probably, Amanda, in some capacity. You really can't. I mean, once you get it, there's something really special about it. And, you know, you mentioned community, and I always feel like whether it's Charleston, which is certainly known as a culinary hotspot, or Boone or Akron, or like any town or city where you go, well, this place is great because, and you go, well, tell me 5 reasons that place is great. They're always going to talk about the hospitality scene,
right.
You know, the hotels, the restaurants, that just the so much revolves around good hospitality, whether that's Taco Lou, this independent standalone place, or a concept where you figure out how to create great hospitality with great people and replicate that. And that is not an easy thing to do. McAllister's did that very well.
Right.
How long were you part of McAllister's? What was
so when I was 2 years, and then I went down when I graduated, and then I was with them for a year and a half in Jackson, training franchisees, and then I became the first employee to franchise out.
Okay.
So Dr. Newcomb had sold Florida, which I told him my junior year. I was like, if you ever think about franchising this, I want to go back to Florida. I want to get back to the East Coast.
Okay.
And he sold Florida out from under me, and kind of had that come to Jesus meeting with him. And he asked me, what do you want to do? Because, I mean, I spent a lot of time on the road, you know, help retrain franchisees that had opened and kind of fix their business.
Yeah.
And then I said, hey, I want to be a franchisee. I told you this 2.5 years ago, and now you sold Florida. And he asked me, he says, where do you want to go? And I said, Columbia, South Carolina. And he's like, do you know anything about it? I said, no, but it's the last SEC school that you haven't sold, and a state that you haven't sold. And I want to get back to the East Coast and far away from the franchisor as I could.
Yeah.
And so bought it sight unseen, and then traveled over, and I was like, oh God, what did I do? So, it wasn't the SEC school that I was used to, that everything was built around the campus. I mean, you could say it is, but it was, in a city. So, it was a wild ride.
So that was the last SEC school, and you had this experience with all the catering for the games, and so you just...
Yeah, I mean, when we built out McAllister's, I mean, we had Tuscaloosa, we had Auburn, we had just sold, Knoxville, we sold Gainesville and Tallahassee, that was my original plan, was to say, okay, look, we're successful. We started in a college town, so you think, well, that's where your best success is going to be. And it turned out that was not the case with McAllister's. I mean, it was when franchising really started getting hot. And, I picked South Carolina because I knew it was a state that I could control if I grew it correctly.
Yeah.
So I went as far away as I possibly could.
Okay.
And turned out to be a great success.
How many locations did you wind up with?
So in 10 years, I built out 17 locations.
Okay.
And then I also got involved in another franchise concept at the time.
Okay.
Because I knew I was running out of territory. So I built out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I had a great team that I put together.
10 years, 17 locations?
Mm-hmm.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I was young. I was 24 when we opened our first location.
Okay.
So
You were okay.
I was
so
running
all that
hard.
travel and hustle was like,
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So, you could work 80, 90 hour weeks and not feel a thing.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that today.
No.
But it was just a passion for it. And to me, it was about building the people, building the team.
Yeah.
And so I had a great team that really helped me and was crazy enough to follow my crazy dreams of, building them out as best I could. So.
Okay. And then when did you open your first Vicious Biscuit in 18?
2018, yeah. December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas.
What prompted
So
this?
early on, I was introduced to a guy who wanted to get into the biscuit category.
Okay.
Was introduced to him through a private wealth manager. And the guy said, hey, was telling a friend of mine, Josh, if you want to do this, you need to meet George. He has a lot of restaurant experience. And I was out of it. I mean, I sold all my McAllister's and my Italian restaurants back in 2008. And so I had started some other stuff. And then in 2017, we met. He had a great, kind of had an idea, a business plan. So I did a deep dive into it, saw that the brunch category was kind of missing some really good operations, or, just that category had gotten so built up with higher end restaurants. And so I, went and traveled around, looked at some of the restaurants that were in the space, like Maple Street, and then, saw Biscuit Love in Nashville, Denver Biscuit Company. And then, I just saw that, there was a niche that could be found. So I came back to him. I said, okay, I like your idea. I don't like the name. I don't quite like the chef we have right this moment. I was like, my wife makes better biscuits than what he's putting out. I said, so let's, we looked at a location that they would not give us a long-term lease at the time, because it was a developer who was developing all up and down in Mount Pleasant. And so we tabled it for about 2 months. And one morning I was reading a food critic article. It was an article she wrote, and she was raving about a guy who just started a catering company with his wife, or was at a catering event, and it was called Vicious Biscuit. And she raved about his biscuits, and I said, now that's a name that I can get behind. That's a brand that I can build. And so I called him up. I said, what's your plan? He's like, well, we would love to try to get a food truck. I was like, well, that's food prison. I build brands. I'm a brick and mortar kind of guy. And I said, if your food is half as good as your name, I want to meet. So I met him the next morning in his kitchen at his house, had his biscuits, had his fried chicken, he had 4 entrees at the time. I said, this is it. And I literally turned to, at that time, my partner, Josh, and I said, let's call that realtor back, see if we can get that building. And right then and there in his kitchen, the guy said, you know what? We'll give you a long-term lease this time. So we did. So that's our first location right there in Mount Pleasant. Small restaurant. I mean, it's only 1,900 square feet.
Yeah.
So,
cool location.
yeah, it's pretty iconic. Yeah.
Yeah. When you say you deep dived it, okay, so you traveled around. So there's I'm familiar with some of those, not others, but there's also like Flying Biscuit. So there were biscuit concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Denver Biscuit's interesting. I think of biscuits, I always think of the
Southern.
South.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
What was missing?
I think with ours it was more, I know I want to do it more chef-based driven.
Okay.
High quality, high value.
Okay.
I was in the full service industry of restaurants. I wanted to get back to that quick casual, to where, a young family can get in and get out for brunch. I mean, our real drive was to make brunch fun again.
Yeah.
Be part of the experience, not
Okay.
just dealing with a waiter or waitress, where you're waiting for an hour on a Saturday or Sunday to get in.
Yeah.
I knew that brunch was the way that kind of the millennials were evolving in the workspace. And I mean, this was in 2017. This is pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's a niche here that they're not hitting. And so I said, if it's really the high quality food like we, used to have at McAllister's, I said, we can drive this 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. And then we were really the first ones in the industry to add alcohol. So into that quick casual segment, right?
Yeah.
Full service already had it. But I knew, I was like, if we can get this done right, and we worked on it. We were in a test kitchen for a year, really perfecting the high quality of the biscuit that we have. And really, we're not just biscuits, right? I mean, we have a not so vicious side where it's very healthy options, where we always say, the fourth rider in the car always gives a veto vote of where you're going to go. So we needed to have those healthy options, which those were kind of mine, because I was the old guy in the group.
Yeah.
And then it was just really just the quality and execution. Can we design a kitchen that we can keep somebody in a 4-foot box where we can have the throughput and be able to deliver it in 6 to 8 minute ticket times with the highest quality you can possibly deliver. So, and I got to hand it to him. I mean, Josh, who was my partner at that time, he was in the medical industry and wanted to get back in the restaurant industry, but he was extremely talented chef at the time, and was, plate presentation was awesome. So that was really the drive behind us. I mean, that was kind of our mission, was to say, how do we make brunch fun again, and be a part of it.
And then, so you opened in 18,
Mm-hmm.
and how long was it before you started going, okay, I think we may have something here. Let's start.
It was early on.
Early on.
Matter of fact, we had somebody walk in our restaurant 3 months after we opened and said, I want to buy this concept. I was like, well, we're not for sale. So actually, I gave him a ridiculous number. And he was like, well, how did you come up with that number? And I was like, well, if someone's dumb enough to come in and buy a concept that's only 3 months old, you're dumb enough to pay the number I'm asking for.
Yeah.
And so we really perfected it. I mean, we worked hard on the SOP. I went in it with a mindset of, I want to grow it. If I'm going to get back in the industry, I was out of it for 15 years. And I said, if we're going to do it, really want to do this right. Let's build the vehicle that we can, run hard with and develop it all over the, at that time we say Southeast, but I was like, let's do it all over the United States. I mean, our food travels. We knew it. And we were really getting that feedback from our customers that were in there. So it was in October of 2019, we weren't even a year old, that I sat my two partners at that time down, and I said, look, it's time for me to kind of step up. I was already involved in, retail business, which was boring. I was in manufacturing. I was in development, multifamily development, doing a bunch of stuff. And I said, this is my last hurrah. I want to get in here and really do this. This is what I'm passionate about. I mean, even my wife asked me over a year ago, she's like, are you happy you're back in the restaurant business? I said, I couldn't be more happy. This is a business that you have immediate gratification from your customers. Because, I mean, listen, I have a very successful wine, beer, spirits business called Bottles that's in South Carolina, very large retail. And you don't get to see the customer gratification. You can sell them thousands of dollars of, wine or beer, spirits, and they go home. You don't see them enjoying your product.
Yeah.
And so that was really the driving force behind it. And then, funny enough, when we opened up, my 15-year-old daughter, I told her the night before, I was like, look, we're about to open this restaurant 3 days before Christmas. You're all on Christmas break. You're going to work with your dad tomorrow morning. She's like, Dad, I've never worked in the restaurant business. I was like, look, it's been 15 years for me. We'll fake it until we make it. And then within 2 weeks, she was practically running the place. So it was really cool.
That's awesome.
So
that's really cool.
It was a lot of fun.
Well, you can hear you ooze that sort of passion for what you're doing. I mean, I bet if you were talking about real estate development, it would be a different type of conversation.
Yes.
I mean, not that you don't like it and you're not good at it, but I can just tell that, and that's what comes with hospitality,
Right.
which is probably what I'm imagining you picked up on that fairly quickly with being a part of this.
Especially with Vicious, because that is the core focus of the brand. When you look at the brand identity, and you just talked about a number of different concepts, what differentiates Vicious from Flying Biscuit or these other ones. Mm-hmm. I mean, the focus is entirely on people.
Yeah.
Whether it's consumer facing, or if it's team facing, everything that we do just oozes hospitality. And, for me, right, a lot of what I do is I'm bringing tech integration and the efficiencies of those into the operations. But I think what we do really well at Vicious is that we don't replace people with technology. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing that so much across the restaurant space right now. Yeah. And really honing in on our roots, right? We are from Charleston. We are the epicenter of just culinary innovation. I mean, people come from all over the world to eat in Charleston. applying just that hospitality piece to a quick service space has just been the game changer for us. People love that they can get in and it's efficient, but they're still getting a high touch system. And it really attracts too franchisees. They're so attracted to what we're doing and just the viral following that we have. There's such an energy that's in the space. And, for me, it was so attractive coming from tech. Tech is boring, right? It really is. I mean, it's systems, it's processes, it's implementation, it's functional.
Yeah.
But this hospitality and this peaceful piece, I mean, that's where you can really be passionate. And to be bringing this brand all over, nationally and having people attracted to it, I mean, it's so easy to be passionate about it and get behind it. It's infectious, quite frankly. And I think that's what people are driven to by the restaurant industry as a whole.
Well, it's been an interesting last few years with how much tech has been entered into this space, how hard it was for several years there to get people to work. I mean, to even not just to get them to come to work, but to hire people. I mean, after, through COVID, it was like everybody kind of left the industry and went and did other things. I mean, I can't tell you, there's probably like a year and a half where every single episode, I almost stopped doing the podcast for a while because all we would talk about is nobody will come to work. Can't get anybody to come to work. Nobody wants to, and it just got to be like, well, God, is anybody ever going to come? And then so there's all this tech that was here to kind of replace people. And of course, hospitality's never going to go away. It's, it's been around forever and it always will be, because as long as we're around, what do we like? We like this. We like conversation. We like validation. We like somebody to actually, care that we're there. And that's it's easy for the two of you to do it. It's easy for somebody that's a franchisee that's putting their life savings into this or making a big bet, but it's hard to get people on your team to buy in and care. And I mean, you take, like, I think of a brand like Chick-fil-A and I think, I don't know how they do it, but I know that somehow they are able to build this team of a lot of people, and a lot of them are young people. But you go there and there's a very big difference in that experience versus, drive across the street and go to McDonald's or whatever else. I had my son work there, his first job. My youngest son will work there next summer, his first job, because I know that they're going to learn something that will carry on. And I'm getting to this point, which is, I feel like what you learn in hospitality, if it's done right, if it's baked into the culture, if it's baked into the process and it's managed and executed well, the skill sets you learn in hospitality, like what your daughter started learning that day, 3 days before Christmas, I feel like you can take that anywhere, because today, to me, the bar is so low for just basic customer service. Like, the customers feel like they care, like that you care, not just in hospitality, in any industry now. If you just do stuff that, like, we may have grown up with, like, sort of basic stuff. I mean, I'm 50 now. Like, I'm like, well, this is what you do, but that's not what everybody does now.
Right.
And the experience is so poor in so many industries. That's why I feel like hospitality is so important, because I think that you learn this skill set of not just how to treat people right, how to care that somebody's there. They're there spending their hard-earned money. Yes, the food has to be right, the ambience has to be right, but the interaction that the people that work there have with them is like, that's what they remember, right? Because it's how you made them feel. And that's harder to find these days, but if you can do that well, and this is going to be y'all's big challenge, of course, which you already know, is, okay, yes, we got X number of corporate-owned stores, we got this. Well, now we got to bring in franchisees in Akron.
Right.
Can they execute on this?
So early on, when I became a franchisee back in '97, when I my first location, it was very simple what I learned from the do's and don'ts of franchising when we started McAllister's. And, Dr. Newcomb, as any franchise, or any concept that starts off in franchising, it's like, let's just sell franchises. Well, I learned quickly that's not the proper approach, right? And it kind of lagged a little bit in the development of McAllister's because I was going around fixing who he sold to that really didn't have a passion for the brand. So when I jumped ship and became a franchisee, it was very quick. Our mission statement was very simple. Employees first, customers second. Take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers. I can't talk to every customer. If I'm out there building 17 locations, I do my best to remember, which manager is working that day or where, when I go and visit our locations, I literally had a cheat sheet because I was terrible at remembering names, but I remember faces. But I would say that it was very early on that we developed a culture back. We had, the name of my company at the time was Mac Restaurant Corporation, abbreviation of my name. And we quickly developed, actually our employees developed this Mac for life. And literally we had T-shirts, made up that would sit, on their sleeve. And the most rewarding thing to me in this industry is I still see former employees who we taught them how to become somebody, how to interact with the public. So I was asked to speak. I used to speak at a lot of universities and graduating seniors from both high school and college. And first thing I asked them is, who's ever had a restaurant job? And if it was half the room that would raise their hand, I'd look at the other half and I said, go get a restaurant job tomorrow. You got to learn how to deal with the public. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge we have today with social media. And, my kids communicate through text. Even my wife will communicate to my kids upstairs that dinner's ready through text. I'm like, wait a second. My mom used to ring a dinner bell. So, I think that's, to me, is the most rewarding part of this business. And we have developed that culture before we ever opened Vicious. I said, guys, remember this. This is about the entertainment business. We're not in the restaurant business. We're in the entertainment business. People are coming to us to spend their money to be entertained and to be treated with great food and great service. So we preach that every day. So one of the things that we have worked hard on since day one is building that culture. And so when I was telling you earlier about October in 2019, I went and hired back one of my old restaurant operators. And I said, I need you to come in. He was working with Chick-fil-A. He's been there for over 3 years. And I said, listen, I'm looking for a director of operations that can really build a culture and to grow this out. Because in order for me to grow this concept and be successful with it, we can't just think we're in the restaurant business. We got to remember we're in the entertainment business. And so that's all we work on an everyday basis is building that culture and teaching our employees every single thing about the restaurant so they feel like it's their restaurant. Empower them to make decisions on their own. And I always say to them, look, I make at least 10 mistakes a day. I don't care if you make a mistake. I only care if you learn from that mistake and you grow and prosper as a person, and learn how to deal with the public in a polite way. And, it's sad because, I'm 51. I've been in this industry for over 30 years. And I look at it and I go, man, that's what's missing today. And we have really stuck to our guns about it. I mean, we didn't lose employees during COVID. We held strong with it, and we actually gained employees because they saw how much fun it was. We were able to get very experienced restaurant operators that came to us and said, I want a new way of life. I love the hospitality industry. I'm not leaving it. But if you're telling me I'm working from 7 to 3 every day, I'm home by 3:30, and I'm with my family, man, we had applications flying in the door. So we've been very, very keen on, we teach that to our managers and our employees every day, man. Learn everything about it. I mean, we cross-train. We don't go out and hire chefs or sous chefs and all that. We want people who want to learn and be in this industry. And that's what's kind of kept us as the leader in this industry, in this segment. So that's a culture that we will never change. And it's been very rewarding to us.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? That's a Stanley Drucker quote. I completely agree with that.
And we have very long tenured employees, which is pretty unique in this industry.
It's very unique in this industry.
We just celebrated 3 years of one of our general managers out of our original location. Our director of training has been with us for well over 3 years. Most of our support staff at our HQ that is involved in the franchise piece, they've all been with the brand from 2020 or 2021 forward.
Even before that.
Even before that, some of them. We've had them there for a long time. And that says a lot because they're growing with a brand that at the beginning, people they wear more than one hat, and they're just so passionate about the people that work with us and what we're doing, and really the mission and the vision that we are trying to aspire to in this segment. So it's really amazing to watch how this type of concept being so niche and being a breakfast, I mean, that's what's so attractive to franchisees right now is that, and that's why breakfast is booming, not only from consumer market share, but when you look at it for a prospective franchisee, that one shift operation does bring in a different type of employee. It attracts more employees and you can retain them because turnover is very expensive.
Yeah.
So, I would say it's twofold in terms of your point on hospitality. Having great employees that believe and are passionate in the brand, it infuses throughout the entire space. And then that trickles down to the guest experience. But most importantly, I think what we're really proud of and what we've spent a lot of time building, because we do have several former Chick-fil-A employees and operators, is we are a very high-touch brand, but we are a high-system brand. And we have spent a lot of time developing training programs and systems, digital learning management systems, to have the best trained employees that we can, whether they're a cashier, a barista, back-of-house line cook, a franchisee, a manager. We have all those systems in place. And, better trained employees, they're more likely to stay and retain and just improve the system overall. So we've been really proud of that.
Good training, give them the good tools that make their jobs easier. What do you use Opus or what?
We use ExpandShare.
ExpandShare.
So ExpandShare actually was recently purchased by or acquired through Restaurant 365.
Yeah.
But we've been using them. So we have an entire digital training platform that was developed prior to us franchising that we use to train not only franchisees, but our entire corporate staff as well. So we have learning tracks built out that augment also the on-the-job training, if you will. But, we have our classroom training and then we have our main operational training as well.
Gotcha.
So it's just to ensure that, we have scalability and that we keep everyone within the guardrails and the brand standards, because that's how you scale franchising. I mean, that's how we're going to continue to grow the brand outside of just Charleston, South Carolina.
Will, you can see that from my past, I learned of the do's and don'ts in franchising. And we were asked, from the day we were open, about how do I franchise this? Can I be a franchisee? And I said, absolutely not. We got to do a proof of concept. So that's where we went to Somerville next, a completely different market than Charleston is. And it was our proof of concept to see what's, will this brand fly? Will it go into different markets? And so we opened that in July of 2020, right in the middle of COVID, when we were only 50% dining room. And those customers walked in. We had the other half of the tables and chairs stacked up in the corner. And they just started lining them out. And I was like, well, I guess in South Carolina we can kind of get away with that. But it was the systems that people. Our first franchisee we signed had asked me for over 3 years to become a franchisee. And I said, we're not ready. I said, let me get the SOPs in place. Let me learn from what we did back in our McAllister's days. I was like, let's develop that culture and the system in place. So, I was fortunate that, I met Amanda and I said, look, before we ever consider franchising, I want the systems in place. I don't want to be a typical franchisor that just says, all right, we'll learn on the fly. I really wanted us to have the systems in place. And, I got to give Amanda the majority of the credit and her team that she has put together. So we're ready for franchising. And that's why we didn't franchise right out of the gate. We waited. And we didn't launch franchising until last year for that very reason.
I was going to ask you, so you have how many?
We have 7 corporate locations, and then we just opened our first franchise in Akron about 3 months ago. Okay. And he was one of those guys that just, they pinged us for 2 years saying, I want to be a franchisee. I'm like, I want at least 6 to 7 corporate locations open before we ever consider franchising. Because we treated each one of the locations I went around, I specifically chose completely different markets, first and foremost, to figure out who we are, right? Figure out who our customer is. And we treated each location like it was a franchise, even though it was a corporate-owned location. And we built those systems out to make sure that we had, the training department down right. We had the scheduling and how to work through the construction side of it. How do we value engineer it to make sure when a franchisee goes to build their location, they don't go through the heartaches of what we're trying to do and try to figure out how to build these, especially during COVID, which was arguably the most difficult time to ever build a restaurant. I've built over 40 restaurants. Those last 5 were probably the most challenging. But we have those systems down in place to where our franchisees don't lose time. And so arguably the biggest reward I get when we do a discovery day with franchisees coming in, and we very selective who we ask to come to discovery day. They're very experienced operators. And like I said, the biggest compliment we get is when you get somebody who's out of, part of a 750 unit franchise concept, and they come to us and they go, "You mean to tell me you only have 7 locations?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You're far more advanced than any franchise we've looked at." And we had a group just in their last Discovery Day. They're like, "We looked at 100 different concepts. They're nowhere near where you guys have in your technology and your support to do it." He's like, "I cannot believe you only have now 8 locations open." And I was like, I lived through that nightmare, 30 years ago. I'm not doing it again. I was like, I enjoy my life. I don't need to be buried into let's learn it on the fly. I kept saying to Amanda as she was coming to me and saying, "You do realize what this is going to cost to put these systems in place and do this AAU study and figure out who we are, put this marketing program in, put this system and tech in there." And I said, "I don't care." I said, "It's worth the return on investment for me because I don't want my team to go through the headaches of trying to learn on the fly." So it was, we spent 2.5 years of really digging in and looking at it. I knew we were going to franchise, but I wanted to have at least 7 locations to when the franchisee opened up. We knew the do's and don'ts to do. We knew how to really perfect the opening and the training. And it was just from past experience of being involved in 2 different franchises. So,
Yeah, a lot of franchises grow really fast, really quickly. I'm sure that's nice for the franchisor to get all these franchise fees and all that kind of stuff, but that eventually, you see that and then you see them halt.
it kills them. I went through it.
Yeah.
And I don't, listen, I'm the owner of the concept. I don't have a board to listen to. I don't have investors to listen to, which is great because it gives us the flexibility to choose. And we choose, for franchisees, when they come in, I was like, I don't need a franchisee. I need a partner who's passionate about the brand. And they always ask me, "What's your requirement?" I'm like, "Well, it's great to have experience, which we really look for, but we interview that franchisee just as much as they should interview us. We secret shop the restaurants. And when we flipped on franchising, we were using Fran Connect to really, have the systems in place so we can vet out franchisees. But we had 136 applications when we flipped the switch.
Called?
Fran Connect. She can tell you the
CRM system.
Okay.
So it's just you collect all of these leads and your inquiries, and we use it for our onboarding as well. We take our franchisees through a very structured and developed checklist so that they open on time. And it drills into every piece of the business from, filing for an EIN number all the way through construction bids. So we have very structured systems in place to get the franchisee from point A to point B.
Okay.
Very quickly and on time.
Okay. Gotcha.
So through that system, before we even turned the switch on franchising, we already had collected 136 leads for individuals that were looking to franchise with us.
Looking to franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, we only chose 5.
I was going to say, okay, that was my
And that was key to us. And, we vet them out
How many did
pretty
you
well.
talk to?
136?
At that time, but we were getting at least 2 inquiries a week, maybe more.
Are
And
you
so
able
I was
to
calling them.
rule them out
I call them on the phone.
quickly,
I could tell just from the questions they ask, and when I'd ask about their business and what drove them or what empowered them on the business. The first thing, if it was about money, was probably the first negative sign to me. I'm looking for someone who wants to grow a business, to empower their people, to have the opportunity to, give people the opportunity to grow. We hire on a manager. From day one, I always say to the manager, "You give me 2 great years, you learn this business, you show me that you can work through people, not around them, you can empower people, I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you're the next franchisee." Give them the same opportunity I had. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's the most rewarding part of this business to me, is really giving that person an opportunity to have a great life, be their own boss, have their own business. So.
But I'll tell you this, what we're really fortunate for is that our franchisees have all been consumers first. And that's how they find out about the brand. It's not through just marketing efforts. It's not cold calls or leads. We're attracting people because they come and they try the product, and it's an unexpected experience for them.
Yeah.
And that's how they're reaching it. And that attracts in a completely different quality of franchisee, quite frankly. Somebody that is so passionate about your branding, your product, and what you're building. that's what makes this even more exciting and easier to work with and select and vet these individuals, because they're just not looking to come in and just, oh, this looks interesting, this is a cash grab. No, they're truly excited and passionate about what we're doing and building. And they want to be a part of it because it's a pioneering effort, right? They're at the ground floor. We're just an emerging concept. And that's what we're really fortunate about, is that a lot of this is just through our product and what we do every single day. And that's what's attracting people to our concept.
Well, you've got 5 signed?
We have 9 signed
9
right now.
signed.
We've awarded 40 units through those 9, and we probably have another 14 in the pipeline. So we'll probably end, right now we're at 8. We'll double our unit count next year.
Okay.
In
so
our current
9
growth
signed, 40 awarded.
Correct.
Okay, so you're giving 4 or 5 or whatever per, and these are
Primarily area development agreements, that's correct.
area development agreements. Okay. You have somebody in Virginia.
Right.
In the pipeline, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
So we have 2 currently in development, I guess technically 3, but Gonzales, Louisiana is going to open in fall of this year.
It's Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Gonzales, and then we have Hattiesburg, Mississippi as well, which should be late this year, early 2025.
Okay.
Then we have Indiana,
Fishers, Indiana. for
Ohio,
2025.
which Ohio's already opened up.
Akron.
But we already done.
Okay.
We have another one.
Is Akron the first franchise?
That
They
was the
are,
first
correct.
that was the first franchisee that opened.
And when they just
And he had a
opened?
location the day he signed.
Okay.
And he's doing extremely well.
All right, y'all, check it out. Stick is our sponsor, connectwithstick.com. This is an incredible text and marketing tool. So check this out. Engage your customers, drive foot traffic, and increase sales at your bar, your restaurant, your store with Stick. Your targeted messages reach your audience instantly, promoting special offers and events. Look, 98% of texts are seen within 3 minutes. So this thing is simple and it's effective and it works. Elevate your marketing strategy and watch your customer base grow with the most direct way to connect with your customers through text. Start today and see results on the very first text. Stick is a better way to connect with your customers and the easiest way to increase your sales. www.connectwithstick.com. And again, that's www.connectwithstick.com. Folks, this is an awesome sponsor. It's an awesome business. We at Schedulefly know them well. We know that the results are there. This is a highly effective tool, and it's run by a business run by great people. Check them out, connectwithstick.com. So franchisees, you narrow these folks down through various criteria. I wonder, is there a common thread other than like they get it and they get the big picture and they're not about the short term, they're not about cash, they're about, I want to take this amazing brand that you've created and build it out in my community and build my own, ecosystem of your brand that does an incredible job in this community. Are you looking for people that already have other franchise experience? Do they need to have that? Or do you also have people that are coming out of corporate America that are just like, I want to have my own thing, but I don't want to just start from scratch? Or is it both?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a both.
Yeah.
Our franchisees in Indianapolis and parts of Indiana, they've bought a large part. I mean, our number one requirement for any franchisee, if they do not have the experience, they have to have an operator that's going to have skin in the game, at least 10% ownership in it, because we want them to be passionate about our brand. And so it's not, look, we've had big players have come in and said, I just want to add something. I'm like, well, that's the wrong answer. We want us, Vicious, to be their driving force. They should be the ambassador of our brand. And we're going to protect that. We don't have to grow. We want to grow the correct way. And we want to grow with the people who are going to really be the driving force of the brand and protect it. Because that's, you see all these that are just, let's open as many as possible. We're not going to live that nightmare. So this is too important to me. And so this
is your legacy. This is
yeah,
part
absolutely.
of your legacy, but your final
I mean, my
Right,
daughter
so-
chose to go to. My daughter was supposed to go to South Carolina, full ride nursing. Last minute, she goes, "Dad, I'm going to Ole Miss. I want to follow your. I want to follow your footsteps and do what you did." And so she did, and now she's graduating early, coming back. She already works remotely in the business. She comes back every summer and works, and even over Christmas holidays. And it's crazy. I'd never expected her to be in the business, but she's very passionate about it and loves it. And you know, she told me, she goes, "I want to do what you do. You create opportunity for people. I can't do that in nursing." I was like, "Well, you can go save lives, or you can make biscuits." So you know, it's been a great ride. So
Well, you know, I've been to that town. Have you been to St. Leo?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. I go back to Oxford at least 5 or 6 times a year. I try to, at least.
I need to get you connected with Emily Blunt. She owns St. Leo.
Yeah.
They're a great customer of ours, and she's awesome.
Yeah,
And,
I know. I've met her. I know her.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a book. What's the bookstore there?
Square Bucks.
Square Books.
Yeah.
So quick sidebar story. Right, I think it was like a year after COVID. Maybe it was 2021. I decided that it would be a really cool idea to rent an RV. We live in Waxhaw, just south of town, just south of Charlotte. And I was like, let's go out to Boulder, Colorado. I've got a good friend out there that he and his wife own restaurants out there. And he was going to be in Michigan for the summer. And he's like, look, my house is yours. Like, we'll be gone for a month. Just come whenever you want. So I taught my family into going out to Boulder, Colorado in an RV. And let's just say that by the time we made it there, we're sitting at lunch one day, and my wife and my kids are all kind of quiet, and they're all looking at me. I'm like, all right, I'll buy it. What's going on here? They're like, we don't want to go back home in the RV. I'm like, well, I don't care. Like, we have an RV that we rented from a dude in Waxhaw, and we have to get it back. And they're like, well, can't you tow it back? I'm like, how many times have you seen an RV being towed? No, you can't. Well, after a long back and forth, I went, okay, fine. Fair enough. I took them to the airport. They flew back, and I drove this RV home by myself. And I'm like, I'm going to go see some customers and just take my time. I had like a week.
That's awesome.
I went to Santa Fe, but I went through Oxford, and I'd never been. I'd heard it just seemed like a cool town. Yeah. And is it ever? I mean,
it's amazing.
I hung out with Emily. I went to that bookstore. I was like, this is the coolest bookstore I think I've ever seen.
Right.
And spent just a day there. It was like 6 hours. So I've been wanting to go back like ever since.
All right.
Now, Hattiesburg, where you have a franchisee,
right.
is this?
It's south of there. It's about 5 hours from Oxford. People don't realize
like
all.
College friend thing?
No,
they
were somebody that first found us on social media.
Okay.
And then they came out and tried it. They were blown away by it. And then I always joke with Cliff, who's our franchisee down there. It's 2 brothers. They're in the restaurant industry down there, part of another franchise. And I always tell this story now, and I joke with Cliff. I'm like, you do realize that I'm going to make fun of you at all these discovery days. But he literally asked me, we were having a phone call about it. He says, George, do you think this brand will travel from South Carolina to Mississippi? And I go, Cliff, you do realize that I took McAllister's from Mississippi and went as far away as the franchisor as I could. And within 6 months after we opened, we were the number 1 franchisees for 4 or 5 years until Texas opened up. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. I was like, you found us on social media and you're in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Yeah. This brand travels. I mean, we've had franchise requests all over the United States and even from a couple different countries. And so in our conversation, we were talking like 30 minutes into our conversation. He goes, oh, man, I forgot to tell you this story. He says, my son he was turning 9 or 10 years old, and his birthday was during spring break. And so we couldn't have a birthday party until all his friends came back from, traveling from spring break. And he said, so that Sunday morning, his wife came downstairs. He had 7 or 8 kids at his house. And he said, his wife was like, all right, I'm going to make you beignets. Well, beignets is in New Orleans, Café du Monde, it's a famous thing. And one of the kids looked up and says, oh, I love beignets. And Cliff asked, he goes, really? You down in New Orleans? He goes, no. He says, my family, we were in Boone for spring break, and we found this restaurant called Vicious Biscuit. And we ate there on our second day, and then we ate there every single day after that. So we have what we call a Vicious Beignets, which was my take on, taking the beignet and then adding a cream cheese filler to it, with cinnamon and cream cheese filler to it. And I was like, Cliff, do you realize what you just said to me? And he goes, what's that? I said, you have a 9-year-old in your kitchen who just told you about Vicious Biscuit from Boone and how passionate it was and how many times he ate at the restaurant after visit, being in Boone. He goes, yeah, it was kind of a stupid question 30 minutes ago. I said, I don't have to remind you. But I said, I am going to bring that up a lot.
Yeah, you should.
So
you should. Yeah. Where are y'all in Boone?
Right off the campus. I mean, literally where the basketball arena is, we're less than a block from it.
We're right on Blowing Rock Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't miss us.
No, yeah. I love Boone, and we spend a lot of time around Boone and Blowing Rock. I love it up there. That's a good place to be. So you went out and handpicked because gosh, Boone, Somerville,
Charlotte, Wilmington, and then Jacksonville Beach. So we had
Jacksonville Beach.
Yeah, so
you really did go out and find. This crosses all types of different, customer bases.
Absolutely. So, and we had to look at different markets and figure out where we thrive and what makes us who we are. And so, and then with help of Amanda and her marketing team that she's put together, and the CMO that she works with, they said, look, let's do a deep dive in the study before we really go out and franchise this. And so we can take a rifle approach to site selection rather than a shotgun approach. But that's like true of any new franchise, any new concept. You don't know what you don't know. And you got to get out there and make that investment in it. I still have some great CEOs that I keep in touch with, some being in the industry for so long. And I said, and I'd ask them, I'm like, what should I do? And I'll never forget calling Patrick Walls, who was our franchise attorney that I trained in McAllister's back in 96, or really 95 when we first started launching franchising. And he was involved with a franchise out in Las Vegas. And he was our franchise attorney, in-house counsel for McAllister's for, 15 plus years. And I called him up and I said, look, I know we hadn't talked in a while, but I'm involved in this concept. And he's like, no, I've been following you on Facebook. I see what you're doing. I said, it's really cool. And I said, look, I'm getting every day people asking about franchising. And I'm like, what should I do? Should I franchise this? Because I really want to build out corporate locations, And he said, absolutely. It only builds the brand stronger. And I said, okay. He goes, you remember this, George. You did this with McAllister's. You started the FAC committee, the Franchise Advisory Council, when you were a franchisee. He says, franchisees build and make a brand stronger. And he says, we learn from you guys. And so that's one of the things that when I asked him, I said, okay, well, we'll build a brand. Who should I talk to about putting the, back in the day, it used to be called the UFOC. Now it's called the FDD. And he says, man, call the franchise attorney you used 30 years ago when you did the McAllister's. And so I did. And the guy came down. He's like, look, you've already put a heck of a lot of this SOP in place. And he goes, this will be the easiest franchise agreement we ever write because we don't have to go and train you through all the operations and systems and, bring a whole team in and tell you how to become a franchisor. He's like, you've already been there. He's like, you know it. So it's been it's been cool to, put it all back together to make sure that we're doing it right. So
yeah, well, I love the investment you made and taking it slowly and being patient and figuring this out. When you go to these, you put all these corporate locations in. What have you learned in terms of like, okay, this is how do you like a franchisee calls from Hattiesburg or
right.
Akron? Can this work anywhere with the right franchisee, or do you have to go and look at that market and figure out like, I don't know if the demographics work here, the income, like,
right.
How do you know that?
Well, I'd go back. Amanda's probably much smarter to answer this question, but it's really the study that we did on the 7 locations that we had. So, you can talk about the AAU study that we did.
So last September, we actually had Technomic, leading research firm. They conducted an attitude awareness and usage study on the brand. And it was really to understand, we have these 6 very geographically dispersed locations and very different demographic profiles, right? And, obviously we have all this data. We try to be a very data-driven organization across all pieces, from operations to marketing to technology. How do we utilize all these components to drive brand awareness, drive AUV, et cetera? So we completed this AAU study and we went into each of our DMAs and we surveyed over 1,000 individuals and we used our email list as well. And it really came back with a lot of information that we had assumed we knew about who our core customer is. But now utilizing that data, we have then developed 2 new locations using where we know this is the best demographic profile that fits the Vicious Biscuit consumer or ideal consumer. And they have been incredibly successful for us in new store openings. And I think that's to George's point earlier, can the brand transfer? The answer is yes. The feedback that we have received in Akron, Ohio, about having a taste of the South in their hometown has been tremendous. So while we have this great success in the Southeast, to have this now translate into a Midwest market or a Northeast market, or what will be continuing to build out the Southeast, the brand, the core brand in itself, it really speaks to a very diverse demographic, and that's where we know we can be most successful. So to answer your question is, yes, we know where we need to be, and now there's a proactive approach to development. We don't have to just wait for those individuals to come in. We can say, okay, we know this is where we want to concentrically develop, because that's the other challenge of franchising, right? Yes, we have somebody over here in Akron. Okay, we're going to be down here in Baton Rouge. We also have somebody opening in Mississippi. It's okay, how do we continue to develop these markets, proactively look at locations to see where we want to be that fit that profile, that we will continue to have successful franchisees who will then in turn want to build more, which then builds the brand awareness. I mean, that's really the development strategy that we're putting in place right now. And we've done that through data. So through that data, we've not only been able to determine, okay, developmentally where we need to go, but now we've pushed that into our marketing and our new store opening strategy. Because I think, frankly, that's probably the largest challenge for franchisees. How do you make them successful in a new market where nobody knows who you are?
Yep.
And I think that is probably the inherent challenge as to why a lot of franchise and new emerging concepts or franchisors fail, because they don't have that data behind it, and they don't have a proactive marketing strategy to make them very successful in new markets.
Well, that's that answer, because I'm sitting here thinking, not knowing anything, right, about what y'all do, not really knowing it, not understanding it. I would think, okay, well, I'm in Charleston, and I you're sort of around this area of the Southeast that's accessible by car, and then I go, oh, well, you must just build concentric circles out from there, because if you've been to, people from Boone are also in Charleston or also in Charlotte or whatever, and then they know the brand, and then now you go to Knoxville and you go to Atlanta, and I would just think of
Salt Lake City, Utah.
Correct. Yeah.
Are you Salt Lake? Is that one too?
We have one
Yeah,
too.
we
So-
about to sign a lease, a franchisee.
So then you go, okay, so then how do you,
How do you
if
do
I'm
it?
a franchisee, I'm like, open this place out in Salt Lake City. Nobody knows what Vicious
Right.
Biscuit here is. But
Correct.
with the right data, the right marketing, then you've got the ability. And then you go, okay, Salt Lake City. How do you find, you must help the franchisee figure out, okay, that's probably not the best location, but this one
100%.
We do.
Yeah.
And with the data that she's been able to amass, and before we even were signing Utah, who bugged us for 3 years to become a franchisee, we were really able to look at it and say, will this brand travel to Salt Lake City? And, through the technology that they were able to do and track the customers that are already visiting our locations, we can see where they're coming from. And we could see the demand that we were getting and the demand that we were getting from Utah to bring the concept there. But we already had that franchisee that was bugging us for 3 years to do it. And when we signed them on, we said, okay, we get it. It will work. And so, and then we use that technology when they said, hey, we want to be in this market because it's near my house. And we're like, no, the market where you want to be is probably 10 miles to the west, or it's,
Because
2 miles.
of
We know who our demographics are.
rooftops, number of people per home. What's the
Tech is different today. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to utilize what do you use on an ongoing basis every single day? What is always with you? Your
You're answering the
phone.
wrong person that question, as you
I
can
know.
see
I
here.
just saw
But
your
Is that a
flip
Nextel?
phone.
I mean, literally your answer. But I know the answer to that question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the answer to
okay.
that is your phone is being tracked. Your affinity spending is being tracked. Your foot traffic is your drive time, your dwell time in locations is being tracked. And I know that's probably horrifying to hear, but it is the reality. And we can utilize that data to help our development strategy and our marketing strategy, right? We can determine, okay, where do our core customers, what anchor retail do they visit? How frequently do they visit that? Where are they spending? Where do they go? Where do they come from? What time of day? It's not just, oh, here's some traffic counts for you. It's truly their consumer spending, where they come from. For us, being in Charleston, it's so advantageous for us on the franchising because we have people that come from all over the country and visit us, and we can tap in and see concentrically, okay, it looks like Akron has this a dense population of individuals that visit us, and then we can utilize that in our strategic approach to marketing, not only on consumer end, but also on the franchise end. So we use a platform called Placer AI. I mean, they're one of the leading data house. Placer AI.
Placer AI.
Yeah, they're a data house, and we have that information to not only look at our own traffic and compare, but we also look at it from the approach of other concepts. We can look at other concepts that are similar or dissimilar from us and see what kind of visit traffic, where do they rank in terms of their chain, right? Are they a top performing unit in their system, or are they a low performing unit? We can look at trends ahead of a new store openings. When is their seasonality? I mean, that's our approach as a concept, is to make the franchisee as successful as possible with as much data as we can, and not just an assumption based on, old practices, if you will. And that's how we use tech.
I feel like we're recording a master class right now on franchising. I had the CMO of Chicken Salad Chicks on the other day. We haven't posted the episode yet, but he was telling me that they know that they do really well in like an end cap where there's a home goods.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We didn't dive as deep, but this is fascinating because, but like they know that. So then you get, well, how do you so realistic? Okay, so you go Salt Lake.
Right.
How do you find the right folks out there that know that real estate well?
We educate the real estate broker first.
Yep.
You educate,
And we really do. I mean, we
so
just
you
had a call.
find a broker out there, and you go.
The franchisee typically has a broker because they were
Typically has
the
own broker.
franchisees in Salt Lake are in the restaurant industry, right?
Yeah.
So they're a franchisee of another concept, and they said, "Look, we've used this broker. He's great." I flew out there. I sat down with the broker, and I said, "Here's what we're looking for."
Okay.
And I said, "Now, if you really want the full, in-depth technology, lesson on who we are, call Amanda and her team, and they'll educate you, and they will make your job a lot easier." And that's what I was saying earlier. We take that rifle approach, not a shotgun approach. Back in the old day when I started out,
I was gonna say, you were.
you
That was
used-
like
I mean, it was
gut,
like lick the
you
fingers.
bought
to go-
South Carolina sight unseen.
Sight
So you're
unseen.
talking about
Yeah.
gut and instinct.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but you two are a good combination then, because you're marrying that sort of gut feel with
Correct.
Let's freak it. We got to go with it.
Yeah.
You're smart enough to know you got to find somebody
Look,
that knows how to get
all
the
my
data
life
like
and all the companies that I've owned and developed and built, and I tell this to every one of my general managers: hire people smarter
Hire
and better
people
than
smarter
you
than you. Yeah.
to fill your shoes.
Yeah.
And if you're worried about your job, that means you're not doing your job.
Yep.
Right.
I got
And so that's been my MO since I was 23
Yeah.
when I first started. And it's truly been the success that I've had. And so I amassed a great team. Really, and that's why she went from a part-time controller to, year into it, she was a chief operating officer, because she was able to really put the system in place that she brought from her previous, company that she worked with. And, you put the right people in the right place, and then you use that technology to really question the old guy who goes out and, I used to go to so many restaurant conferences, and we'd always have a real estate guy come up and they go, the old joke was, always was, "Hey, do you know where the number one Walmart is?" And everybody like, "I don't know, somewhere in Alabama or Arkansas." And they're like, "Nope, right across from your next location." That's a typical real estate agent would tell you. And so, in the old data, even when we were choosing the locations that we have currently, we were using that old school data of like, well, here's your traffic count, here's your demographics, here's your drive time. And then you're like, does it mean they're going to stop? Now we know. And so the technology that she's gone through with her CMO and what they know now, it's frightening, but it's awesome.
But to your point, you brought up about Chicken Salad Chick, right? Once you surpass the 20 unit count, you're able to take all of your real estate data and build out a regression model, and it can tell you that information. Hey, we perform very well. So you always see a Staples and a Trader Joe's together. That's why there's just a synergy there. What's unique about using this type of platform, right? Because there's always an investment in any software or tech that you bring in or you integrate into your system, is that we're doing this at 8 units. We're not waiting to build out or understand our customer data and just essentially hope that we select a good location for our franchisees. We've amassed this early on, and that's what I said. We are as much a tech company sometimes as we are a restaurant company, because that's how we know we'll be very successful, is giving the most information to our franchisees that you wouldn't ordinarily see at a unit or a concept that with this few units.
No.
And same thing with all of our tech. We use best in class around in everything that we do, and it's all integrated, which is something that you don't see. And that's what's particularly attractive too, especially, we do attract a lot of multi-unit operators of other concepts, is that some of those larger concepts, they're fraught with their own challenges in terms of they have so much old tech out there, and it's such an expensive investment for them to just recycle or implement new technology, that they are working with so many systems that it makes it very challenging for the franchisee and the end users and the management teams. So we try to make it very simple. Restaurant folks are not tech folks by any means. That is something I learned very early on when I came into this concept. And it was a challenge for me. I mean, everything I do is tech focused. So really having these integrated systems that we can use and that the franchisee can use that are easy to teach and replicatable has also been a core focus of ours as we scale this.
I have to ask you about Pop Menu, because
Sure.
I noticed that y'all use Pop Menu.
Currently, yes.
Currently, yes. Okay. Gotcha. I know them, or, we have a good relationship with them, and I think that they've got their product is does really well.
Sure.
Seems to scale really well and everything.
It's great for SEO.
It's phenomenal for SEO.
Yeah, that's been tremendous there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But ask me the question you want to ask.
I just wanted to bring up Pop Menu.
Yeah. So
I like them a lot. I mean,
I do.
You're putting in. I know you've got to put in systems that are highly scalable. That you're building. You're putting a lot of things in that people put in after the fact. You are doing it, and you're taking your time, and you're building this patiently so that you can scale this up with the highest likelihood of success.
Correct.
And you don't want to have to come back in and unwind something later or piece together something later, that you need to be able to do this now. So I think you have a very smart strategy, and I think you're probably going to have a very low franchisee failure rate, which is another part of that conversation is, how do we mitigate the challenges and minimize the possibility that somebody could get this wrong in another one of your franchisees? I mean, you're trying to. There's a lot of franchisees that everything seems to add up, and maybe because of the lack of data or the lack of the demographics or the lack of understanding the consumer,
Or the lack of support.
or the lack of support,
It's
that
support.
franchisee,
Right.
it doesn't work, and you don't want that.
Right.
We've stayed very top heavy on infrastructure. That's what we've been scaling for so long. I mean, that is the largest investment we have is in people.
Yeah.
So, we have someone departmentally overseeing not only corporate but franchise locations. I mean, we provide a lot of support to a franchisee because, frankly, that is the only way we're going to scale, and that's the only way we can mitigate them not being successful. It goes back to new store opening. Those were all strategies developed on the front end to ensure that we know if they open big, they will stay big. So how do we, number one, get the volume there? How do we make sure that we train the operations? How do we make sure that the back office systems are completely turnkey, that all of those systems are in place, so from the moment they open the door, they're not trying to figure out tech. They're not trying to figure out how to get their P&Ls set up. We're creating all of these structured systems and training solutions so that we do provide them with the utmost opportunity to be successful. And I think that's where a lot, we speak to a lot of different franchisors, frankly. And, I've spoken to a few that are in emerging concepts. Some franchisors provide zero support. to their franchisee. They don't have targets. They don't have systems. They don't have checklists. They don't have anything. And I don't know how you scale any brand without those.
Yeah, that's interesting that they wouldn't have that. That's more of just a roll of the dice than whether that franchisor or franchisees are successful, and there's probably a lot higher failure rate in those situations.
I mean, it's a high failure rate no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, do you have, because you have so much buttoned up and so tight, I mean, and then that narrows down who's going to, people that want to do their own thing are not going to.
Correct.
Like that.
You
really need somebody that's like, I'm bought in hook, line, and sinker to
Without
the
a doubt.
entire, all the process. Just give me the
playbook.
Give me the playbook, and I'm going to follow that playbook.
Yep.
I mean, you're not really giving them opportunity to not follow the playbook.
I mean, we've denied a lot of franchise prospects because of that. And it is, I mean, we go through a very in-depth interview process with these franchisees, and there's ways to you know, you go on your guide to see if they're going to listen, right? And we always said it. I mean, early on in franchising McAllister's, I mean, Dr. Newcomb used to call me the sweeper. I'd go in and clean up a franchisee that at that time, just like any franchisor that needs the cash flow, they just sell franchises hoping to, you know, have the cash to be able to invest in their franchise or company. I didn't want to go through that again. But I would go out to franchisees and I'd be like, why are you putting this on the menu? This is not a part of the franchise concept. And I was like, why did you buy into a franchise? I mean, you buy into franchise is the best thing to do. I mean, I listen to hundreds of podcasts from all over about franchising. And I mean, the thing that you hear over and over and over is you buy a franchise because of the systems already proven in place. And that's what I spent the time and the investment to make sure we knew what worked and what didn't work. And so when people come into us, that's where we get the compliment all the time where they say, I can't believe you're only 7 or now 8 units big. You operate like you're 50 to 100 units. And I was like, I'm not living that nightmare. I have too great of a team, have all the faith in the world in them, invest in them and allow them to go out there and figure it out, you know? And so it's key to us so I don't live that nightmare again, you know, to make sure that we're successful with our franchisees.
I think the best advice you can give to any emerging concept is that you have to have your buttoned up guardrails early on. It is so much harder to pull back later than it is to have, and to do that initial front work, right? To have brand guidelines established, to have your brand story, your positioning statement, your mission, your vision. You need all of those components so that you don't have individuals going astray. And you need to retain some element of control in the things that matter and that are key differentiators and key components of the brand. And that's where we've also done that front work to ensure that here is the playbook. You know, here is how we market. This is how we handle social media. This is how we handle supply chain. These are the vendors that you use. All of those pieces and components are in place to ensure that there is consistency across the brand, because that is franchising too, right? It's consistency so that when somebody comes to Charleston, South Carolina, but then goes to Akron, they are going to the same version of Vicious Biscuit. There's no differentiation in food quality. There's no differentiation in experience. All of those systems are still, in effect, the same. The brand is the same no matter where it is. That's the challenge in franchising.
And we say to all of them that come to Discovery Day, you know, when people, I mean, listen, I've, even out of the industry for 15 years, I would get requests, you know, people try to hire me as a consultant and say, look, I want to look at this franchise. And I say to them right away, I'm like, look at the royalty you pay. You're paying a 5% royalty fee. If you're not getting at least 3 times the return on investment just for your royalty fee that you pay from the support from the franchisor, if you're not getting that, don't do that franchise. And so that's the thing that was so important to me to build this out, to make sure that I can look at a prospective franchisee in the face and say, if you follow the system, you'll get 3 times return on your investment of that royalty fee, because we just want you to operate the business. We want you to empower your people. We don't want you to have to worry about, well, now I got to figure out how to do accounting, or now I got to figure out payroll. Now I got to figure out inventory. It's already in place. It's turnkey for us now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the amount of technology she has behind it, I mean, our managers spend less than 45 minutes a week on back of the house administration. It's all done for them now.
Yeah.
Why would somebody not? Have you had people that have said, okay, thanks, but no thanks?
I mean, we've only had one very large group because it's an emerging brand that say, we want to see how you do. We want to see how you grow and how you open up. Still in talks with them. They love it. I mean, they call us up all the time, say, okay, well, how's Akron doing? Well, how's your new location in Columbia doing? They look at it. You always get that of a very large franchise group, right?
This is a group that already has a lot of other
A
franchises.
lot of locations.
Yeah.
And
Of
that's the
different
only one that
concepts.
hasn't really sent, yes. And they're probably the only one that said, we want to wait. And we were like, great, you're the 800-pound gorilla.
Yep.
We don't want you anyway. I mean, let's just keep in touch. And so, and then we have,
Is this somebody that puts in franchise locations, or is this somebody that buys brands?
both. They have developed multiple franchise concepts, and they've acquired other franchisees in that group that they're a franchisee of.
Yeah.
But no, we really look at, we haven't had any others that have said no. We're the ones that say no.
Yeah, we say
we
no.
have a
But you guys are holding on, like you're not looking to go, like you don't want private equity to come in here and
no. I get asked that all the time.
you're going to do
Yes.
this. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that.
Oh, I hear it all the
I
time.
mean, I'm sure
so.
you could, but that's, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, so, okay, I have to ask you this. You came down from Long Island.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
How is it living down in Charleston?
I love Charleston. I wouldn't go back.
Do you live in Charleston? Do you live in
I live in
Olive
Mount
Palms?
Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant.
I
Okay.
live in Mount Pleasant. Moved
Okay.
down here in 2020, right in
Yeah.
the middle of COVID. We were on our way back here regardless, but I love it. I mean, it's just, you can't beat the weather, the people. It's a great place to live and raise kids.
You have kids?
I do. I have 3.
Okay. How old are they?
16, 14, and 12. So I have a senior, a freshman, and a 7th grader off to school today.
Oh, a senior?
I do.
16?
Yeah, she's 16. So in New York, the cutoff's a little bit different.
Okay.
So she's a October baby. So she's a whole year younger than her classmates. But yeah, she graduates this year.
Are we going to have some vicious biscuits up in New York at some point?
Not anytime soon.
Well, I mean, the part of this too is I'm assuming you're picking franchisees, but I mean, it's very different operating a restaurant in Charleston or a lot of
It
places
is.
in the South than it is in New York City.
It
All the
is.
I mean, you'll probably go there eventually, but the cost structure is different. The regulatory stuff is
Yes.
different. There's a lot more that comes along with that. So is that part of
It is.
okay.
Yeah. So if you look at our website,
Yeah.
there is a primary market and a secondary market that we are looking forward to develop in, and then there are
Okay.
just some markets that we're not. They're just not part of the strategic growth plan at this time.
They're
Because
not
there's-
very franchise friendly.
They're not franchise
Yeah.
friendly. But we also have
Yeah.
other considerations. We have supply chain. We have minimum wage. I mean, there's a lot of different things
Yeah.
to be looking at right now. I mean, we're facing that too. Florida has a higher minimum wage. Ohio does. Looking ahead to Maryland and Virginia, all of those. But really trying to develop based on, vendor partners too. I mean, that's the other inherent challenge with franchising is scaling supply chain and other things. So, because those can be roadblocks. So how do you keep all of these vendors, right, for consistency and scalability, making sure that we can get our same high quality product everywhere? That's really important to our development plan. So we've spent a lot of time, partnering with the right individuals to help us scale in that regard.
Tell me some other franchise brands that y'all know and admire.
Wow. I'll have to think about that one. I mean,
Just the concept as a whole. I think Jersey Mike's is one.
yeah, I
I
mean,
think culturally they are in most alignment.
they were ones right when COVID hit. He
Yeah.
was pretty darn smart. And that's who we hear from, those franchisees that said, I mean, they're very passionate about their CEO because he was really quick to get the app and build his own and pivot pretty quickly during COVID, which really propelled that brand, strong. So, but
Do you
there's,
know Peter?
I feel like I not personally, but I feel as if I do by hearing from so many of their franchisees and how, I mean, just how they, I don't want to use the term drink the Kool-Aid, but how passionate they are on his leadership and what he's done. I mean, we've heard some great stories about him. So I'd love to meet him one day.
I'd love to get him on this podcast one day.
Yeah.
I think his story is fascinating. I admire what he's done because I think it's, for those of you listening that don't know the story, I mean, Peter Cancro was in high school and, was working at a sub shop there and is in New Jersey. And I don't know, the name of the town escapes me. Is it Manalapan? Or I don't know. But, borrowed the money from his football coach, if I don't remember this, was it a PE coach or football coach to buy that store as a 17-year-old high school student.
Right.
And here we are all these years later, and I don't know how many thousands of locations they have. He's still the guy. I mean, that's an impressive run.
It is.
To be able to go through that many layers of growth and scale. And, there's just not many people that can take it from where it was to where it is and be the one person that does all those phases because it takes a lot of different skill sets. But I think that's a great brand.
They have a very strong culture.
A very strong culture.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's what's really impressive, that no matter who we have spoken to from that concept, they all speak the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And that speaks a lot to just the brand identity as a whole. And,
it does indeed.
Just similar like-minded folks that are attracted to franchising.
Yep.
So I think that's impressive.
Okay, so do you know Sierra Grill down in Ponte Vedra? Have you ever heard of Sierra Grill?
No, I haven't. I hate to say that. I mean, because I used to know Ponte Vedra very well, but that was 30 years ago.
There's a Target Center at Ponte Vedra, and there's a place there called Sierra Grill. When I graduated Davidson in 1996, I was dating a girl who was from Ponte Vedra. I had a job lined up at Nations Bank starting in September.
Wow.
I lived with their family that summer. They lived in Marsh Landing near TPC.
Oh, I know Marsh Landing. Yeah.
And her dad was like a financial backer of Sierra Grill right out there at that Target Center. And that was my entry into hospitality.
Wow.
I was the salsa maker every day, Monday through Friday from 10 to 2. I was just curious if you knew. It's still there.
Right.
In fact, so I made salsa from 10 to 2, and then I sold Cutco knives in Marsh Landing to my girlfriend's mom's friends like every afternoon, and that's what I did that summer. But that was my first entry into this world. And the girl I dated at the time, her cousin, it's all came back around when I got this shirt when I was at Taco Lou. Her cousin manages Taco Lou.
No kidding.
This day.
Wow,
Yeah, and somehow we got reconnected there. But Bowles is so I went to college with some kids from Bowles back in the day. We were about the same age. I graduated college in '96. So
that's right.
I'm so inspired by what y'all are doing. I'm so impressed with what you're doing, and I'm so appreciative that y'all came here and shared this today. This is highly valuable educational content, and I hope anybody that's, whether you're in the restaurant business or getting into franchises, this is, like I said, I mean, anybody that's looking to franchise a concept, this is just phenomenal. And I'm assuming that y'all both speak at conferences and share this.
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been asked.
Yeah. Okay, good. There's a lot of risk mitigation and high probability of success that comes along with what y'all are doing. And I'm surprised that more brands aren't doing it this way from early on, but I hope that what y'all are doing will take off, and I hope a lot of people will listen to this and learn, because you've made the investment early on to have the best likelihood of success in a challenging industry, I think, of any brand I've come across.
Right.
So hats off. And
Thank you.
No, we truly appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the best part about the restaurant industry, though, is that there's so much just thought sharing, And that's particularly unique. You don't see that in a lot of industry. For as competitive as it is, this component of it is very free sharing. And I think that's truly what I have loved about coming into this industry as a whole. It's just that connection piece and just sharing these best practices, because they're not just unique to one concept. They're not even just unique to the restaurant industry. And it's really rewarding.
It is an industry that is built on the idea of I want to give and serve and take care of those around me.
It is.
There are people in this industry, as in any industry, that don't maybe share that philosophy at scale, but the industry as a whole, I feel like most people understand rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
And that's refreshing because you can be competitive but also helpful. And I'll never forget when I was at, are y'all from, do you know the folks that run Table 301 Group in Greenville, South Carolina?
I haven't met them, but I've heard about them. Yeah.
Carl Sobosinski and the team there, unbelievable operators of restaurants in and around Greenville. Been there a long time. Just folks you would love knowing them.
Right.
And I was talking to Carl. We were doing a podcast episode, and so he's got this place called Sobeys, which has been down there in Greenville forever.
Main Street, love it.
Phenomenal place. So we're there and we're talking, and right across the street at the time, Steve Palmer and Indigo Road had just opened, and Daco and Oku, I think, were the two concepts. And I was like, does that, Carl, does that concern you? He's like, no, I love it, because now right across the street are two more phenomenally run, well-operated businesses, and all that means is this is just more people coming around here. And, and nights they want to come to Sobeys, they'll come here, and other nights they'll go there. But there's just more of just, what we're trying to do. I want to be surrounded by great operators. I don't run from that. I embrace that, and we want to see that. And I just think that's the right way to look at this.
I mean,
kind of stuff.
those conferences, I always say I got 2 ears and one mouth. I go out, listen twice as much as I talk. And that is, getting back in this industry is really, I have, confided in a lot of great, successful people. And I go, look, guys, I've been out of it for 15 years. What's changed? And that's why early on I said, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's make the investment now. Let's not do it on the fly. And I got to hand it to, Amanda and her team and, our director of operations, who really come in and say, we got to put the SOP in place before we launch this.
Yeah.
So, and learn from some great guys like that.
Who can y'all connect us with to get on this podcast? Who else do you think would be good at sharing? And maybe it's over
on the franchisor side or the franchisee side? I mean, that's a big.
You tell me. I mean, just if anybody you think of that you think that would be a great person to share what they're doing, we'd love to have.
Oh yeah, I'll get back to you on
give
that.
Some thought to that.
Yeah, I really will.
We're always looking for
Sure.
Talent.
Yeah,
I tell you,
we're
these-
always just looking for
in this
great
industry,
people to come share what they're doing. I mean, this is what we did this for. Is
Sure.
we are trying to help share great things that people are doing and how they're doing it and why they're doing it. And this is we want this to be a place for people to come and learn from other people that are doing things really well. And so other people that you think of that you go.
Yeah, we'll get you. We'll
Probably
get you
be good
some.
on Will's podcast, and
Let you know.
let me know.
Yeah, I mean, because it used to be you'd have to wait for the conferences once a year, and now it's great to have these podcasts. I've learned quite a bit from it, and I mean, our whole team, we share podcasts. I mean, we on a weekly basis, we're sending out podcasts to our managers. Say, you need to listen to this. This is here's your next homework assignment. Here, listen to this. Spend the time. I mean,
is it restaurant related podcasts, or is
All-
it also like
all the
management
above.
podcasts?
All
and
the above.
Yeah.
Leadership and development.
Yeah.
What are some other good podcasts that y'all like?
Oh,
God, there's so many
I
of
think
them.
there's the Brendan Allen one is a big
Yeah.
one we give out to the team.
Yeah, our director of operations, I mean, he is avid on it. I mean, he is through books, through either, I mean, I don't know how many darn books I've bought over the last 3 years, but it's
Yeah.
been a lot.
Unreasonable
So-
Hospitality is a great one.
Right.
If,
Will
if you
Guidara.
haven't read it,
Yeah.
highly recommend that one.
He's 11 Madison Park. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story.
Yeah. They're a customer of ours. They've been a
Oh,
customer
really?
for
That's
like
awesome.
Yeah, they're amazing. He's a great. Well, he was a Danny Meyer
Correct.
That's right.
right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. And setting the table is like the sort of the. Have y'all read Setting the Table?
No,
No, I haven't read that one yet.
Oh, y'all. Oh, you got to read Setting the Table.
Okay.
That's great.
By Danny
Add it to the
Meyer.
list.
I love sharing the books.
You want 100% read that. I promise you that. Will got a lot of inspiration and learned a lot from Danny, but Danny
Yeah.
wrote Setting the Table. I mean, that's like sort of the gold standard for, and I tell people, I don't care if you're in hospitality or not,
Yeah.
read that book, because every business ought to operate,
Yeah.
I believe, under those principles, which is what we're talking about, which is like hospitality to me. I mean, it's an industry, and it's providing food and shelter in a meaningful way to consumers. But to me, I feel like hospitality should be in like every business that has the principles that you would find in unreasonable hospitality or in Setting the Table. They're going to be successful.
Right.
Yeah,
whatever
any
they're
business.
whatever they're selling.
Correct.
I don't care what it is. If you take those principles and apply it to your business, I promise you,
Yes.
and you do it faithfully, you'll be
Right.
successful, because that's what we all want. Whoever we're buying from, whatever we're buying, if it's
Right.
food, if it's clothing, if it's whatever it is, if hospitality is a part of that, and you can slide that into any business, you're going to be just fine. But to your point, get a job in hospitality.
You're darn
Yeah.
right.
Really,
Yeah.
seriously.
I think
I completely agree with
every
that.
teenager, I don't care where they live or who they are, what should have a restaurant job, and they need to learn how to deal with the public. I think that's what we're missing today. Kids communicating and being able to deal with the public and adversity. And look, everybody has a bad day and everybody has great days, and you learn how to deal with it.
Yep,
I'm a firm believer of it.
I love that.
And to appreciate the hospitality workers.
Right.
I think
Oh, yeah.
fundamentally, if you haven't been in that space, I mean, I can walk into a restaurant and have a completely different experience now, whether I have a great server or a not so great server, because when you're on the other side of the table, you know the inherent challenges that restaurant folks and restaurant industry is facing, and you just
Yep.
have a whole level of appreciation that you wouldn't have had previously.
Completely agree. I completely agree, and I think we'll close with that. But yes, go get a hospitality job. I've had all of our kids have or will have done that when they've gone through, and it's
Yeah, that's
like,
great.
you're not gonna understand. I get it, son. You don't understand, and you don't like that. But I promise you, one day you'll be, oh, now I see why Dad made me work.
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
It's actually paying off now. Well, y'all, thank you. We'll
you.
wrap
Thanks for
this
having
up.
us.
Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
All of you listening, watching, thank you. More episodes coming soon. This has been amazing, and go check out. So the website is viciousbiscuit.com.
Yes.
Okay.
www.
And all over social media, you'll find them. Check them out.
Right.
That's a wrap.
Thanks.
See
Thank
ya.
you.
Bye.
All right.